Good evening and welcome to the April 5th, 2011 Town of Wareham Board of Selectmen Sewer Commissioners. My last meeting as chair. I'd like to first say a couple of shout-outs out there. Well, first we have a happy birthday on the board. Kara's birthday today.
Thank you.
And then we also have Mr. Ernie Precourt, 100 years old today. Happy birthday, Ernie, wherever you are. Since I'm not seeking re-election, I might make it to 100. Okay, everybody like that? Mr. Cruz, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. All the board members are here, plus Mark Andrews, the Town Administrator.
And do we have any announcements?
Yes, Madam Chair. Gives me great pleasure and honor. Everybody's pause. To give the certificate of recognition to Brenda Ekstrom in appreciation of your dedication, service to the Town of Wareham as a member of the Board of Selectmen, including your service to committees, the Council of Aging, Board of Directors, Affirmative Action Hearing Committee, Toby Will Fund, Charter Review Committee, Clean Water Committee, the Community Preservation Committee, Conservation Committee, Finance Committee, and as a Cemetery Commissioner. The Board thanks you for freely giving your time and the countless hours you have given to its citizens throughout the community in an effort to improve their quality of life and represent their views, needs, and concerns. Further, your dedication, devotion, and hard work has been the linchpin for local town governance. Your splendid public service has been augmented by true leadership. Signed this 5th day of April 2011.
Would you like to say something? She's speechless.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'd like to present to you on behalf of the board, the Board of Selectmen in Wareham, Massachusetts awards the Certificate of Recognition to M. Jane Donahue. On behalf of the citizens of the Town of Wareham and in appreciation of your 4 years of dedicated service to the Town of Wareham as a member of the Board of Selectmen, including your service to the Finance Committee, Miles Standish State Forest Study Advisory Committee, Open Space Committee, Toby Will Fund, Commission on Disability, and the Westfield Review Committee, and the countless hours you have given to citizens throughout the community in an effort to improve their quality of life and represent their views, needs, and concerns. Further, your dedication, devotion, and hard work has been the linchpin for local town governance. Your splendid public service has been augmented by true leadership. Signed this 5th day of April 2011 under the seal of the Board of Selectmen. Mr. Holmes.
Hi, Madam Chair.
Mr. Holmes.
Through you to you and Mrs. Ekstrom, being here 364 days, I was thinking about it this afternoon, and people don't realize the family events, the public get-togethers, and the time that we give in volunteering for the town. I know that we run for it and we ask for it, but I don't think people realize the time commitment away from your family. So on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, I'd like to present you and Mrs. Ekstrom with a beautiful bouquet of flowers.
Okay, more flowers. Still no cake, Frank, sorry. Okay, do we have anyone who would like to speak before citizens' participation this evening? No one. Okay, it's a quiet evening. Our first agenda item is a Westfield discussion. Mr. Savageau, please.
Good evening, Board, Madam Chair, and Mr. Town Administrator. And it is my 100th birthday also. I will, if I can take a personal moment of indulgence, if the Board will allow me, I want to congratulate both the two senior members of the Board who I served with. I know I certainly agree with Mr. Holmes' sentiments about time away from family. There are very few people in the community who understand the experience and just what it is to be a selectman. They're including the prior selectman and the current selectman and the two new selectmen who will take office in your seats next week. No matter what the political divide may be in this community or the political positions that anyone may take, there is a certain amount of camaraderie that I think exists between former and current selectmen, because we've all experienced exactly what you've experienced, and it does take dedication to sit in those seats. It does take patience. It does take some wisdom, and I congratulate all people who serve their community, in such a manner. I was proud to serve as your colleague, but I'm even prouder to call you my personal friends. So, congratulations.
Thank you, Bruce.
Now to the not-so-good news.
I was just going to say, Bruce,
Thank you.
have you got bad news in that,
yes,
that
I
deck?
do. Yes, I do have a little. It's not really bad news. It's the fact is that speaking about the chair and Mrs. Ekstrom as the senior members of the board, they were certainly very supportive of the Westfield project. They understood the implications and to the community, and they also understood what a marvelous thing the community could do here for our seniors. And we very much as a committee wanted them to be part of this review process. We wanted to be able to deliver a workable document to you, well, actually yesterday. And the only way we were going to be able to do that was to have two meetings, and I know the Board of Selectmen and our committee met on that Saturday morning and convened, and we had agreed to two meetings. We started Thursday early, but we were not able. The chair diligently tried to get a quorum, wasn't able to do it, and so we did not meet on that Saturday. So what I'm here to do is to respectfully request to the board that despite that promise that we be given two additional meetings. We did complete on Thursday up to page 18, which is the substantive part of the document. Our chair, as we speak, is implementing the changes to the draft article, the draft document that the Board of Selectmen will need to review. And after page 18 is pretty much all the town administrator's responsibility under the procurement laws, so we're not going to touch those. All we have left is Exhibit J, which is pretty much a formal legal document, so there's not a lot of that's been drafted, and there's not a lot of review that we need to do, which is the management agreement between the developer and the town of Wareham. And other than that, there's only one piece of outstanding information, and on behalf of the committee, I wish to express gratitude to the Board of Selectmen for getting us everything, and the town administrator, everything we needed as quickly as we needed it, and the cooperation has been quite excellent, and it's really allowed us to do our job. The last piece of information outstanding is the most current updated housing stock number for affordable units countable under the DHCD regulations, so that we can include that. We've included the census, we've included the gross housing stock. That number is important to us because it does tend to give us, in the Board of Selectmen, the latitude to incentivize the developer to produce more than, between the range of 150 and 200, but to produce more than just the minimum amount of numbers, if in fact that will help us significantly achieve our goal of reaching our affordable housing count. Other than that, brief report, but that's all I had unless there are any questions from the board.
Thank you, Mr. Savageaux. Does anybody on the board have any questions for Mr. Savageaux? Mr. Holmes.
Through you, Madam Chair, Bruce, thank you and the committee very much. I know that we were really trying to get this done before today. Be that as it may, the housing stock numbers, who are we waiting on that from at this point?
Well, I'm making the request through the board to the town administrator because it would come from planning, and that is under a department function, so that's certainly his domain. If we could just get that number firm, then we'll incorporate it, and that'll drive the language of that paragraph that I'm referring to that discusses as a goal, the community's goal of reaching our affordable housing count under the DHCD rules.
Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Andrews. Mark, do you have an update from John on that?
He is currently with 2 items, if I could, just to recap for the edification of the entire board and listening audience. I think one pertained to the DHCD RFP process, which was answered on the Saturday. The question was posed directly to the chair, so that was completed. And on Monday morning, I asked John Charbonneau to run at, once again, new census numbers to get the additional information relative to the language that Bruce is speaking to. Hopefully, I'll be able to check on that first thing in the morning with the planner and get that off to the committee as soon as possible.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Through you, Madam Chair. Bruce, when is the next meeting? You're meeting Thursday?
Thursday, and
we're going to have that for them on Thursday? Or is it more difficult than that?
Not, the town, through you, Madam Chair, the town planner is working on it, and so I'll get an update first thing in the morning and get that out.
That would be, and if you would direct that to our chair.
Yes.
And he'll incorporate that. And we are requesting not only Thursday, but one additional meeting. So the 18th, I believe that is. We would have a deliverable document by. Am I right?
Sounds right.
Yeah, I can't
April 18th. Yeah, he's right.
7th and the 15th. 14th.
5, 12, 19.
Oh, well, then I'm wrong on the.
It's the 14th of April.
We would want to deliver it probably by the 15th then.
So you could get it to the Board of Selectmen by the 19th?
Yes, to go over. We would like to convene as a committee with you that evening to discuss the draft changes and the final document and answer any questions about what maybe some of our thinking was on some of the issues.
30 minutes?
Not even 15 minutes.
Huh?
15 minutes I think will be fine.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
Thank you again, and please send our thanks to your committee. I know they worked very hard.
I certainly will express that. I also wanted just to be part of the historical record that we all participated in a meeting where Brenda Ekstrom was speechless. I just thought that.
Thank you.
Very good. We have the consent agenda in front of us, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Cruz.
Yes, Madam Chair, we have 2 bills in front of us. Camisa Park, Oakdale Sewer, contract number 2 is service invoice 7 and 8. The first one, and they total, between the 2 invoices, $36,450.39. Invoice number 7, 803-602-226/13 is for $18,074.18. Invoice number 8, number 803-65049/16 is for $18,376.21, which comes out $36,450.39. Project number 76027. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. Mr. Cruz.
Madam Chair, the second bill before us is sewer works improvement, contract number 1, bill invoice number 11 and 12. Invoice, let me make sure. Okay. There's 2 invoices, they total $10,745.28. First one's invoice number. I think we have a mistake on one of these. First one is number 803-602-223/19. That one is $4,977.34. Number 11, 803-65046/22, $5,767.94. The total is $10,745.28. Project number 62748. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Next, we have the approval of minutes.
First minutes is May 13, 2010. I make a motion.
Please.
Motion so moved.
Second.
All in favor?
I'm sorry, for the May 13th? Yeah. Okay, so these were not executive,
No.
even though they have roll calls? Okay, just want to make sure.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Aye.
It's 401. Thank you, Mr. Cruz. Next.
Next, minutes meeting, Selectmen Commission meeting, February 1st, 2011. Motion to accept minutes.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That was Brenda on the second, right? All right.
Opposed? Abstained?
Abstain.
401. Thank you, Mr. Cruz.
Minutes of meeting, July 1st, 2010. So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
Aye.
Aye.
It's 302.
Board of Selectmen Executive Meeting, March 22nd, 2011. So moved to approve the minutes.
Second for discussion. Could we just have them move the subject article number 3 up into the motion? We couldn't go into executive without having the reason for it in the motion.
Madam Chair, are these from last March? This March, 2011?
Oh,
The date at the top.
I thought I
Oh.
was here for this meeting.
Hmm?
I remember it.
Yes, you were present.
Yes, this is just,
So let's
fresh.
amend that.
This is
Yeah.
just from a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, no,
We need an amendment to add
to
Mrs.
add
Winslow.
Mrs. Winslow.
Yeah, the reason why we brought this on so quick is because we'll be missing.
Yeah,
There's
no,
only-
I didn't
Right.
see myself on the present, but I remember the conversation, so.
And you were down here, yeah.
And on the
And-
polled vote.
Would have been a yes on the polled vote.
500. And I'm sorry, did you make the motion to approve and hold? Was that your motion?
Right,
Okay,
because this is executive.
right. I just wanted to make sure that it was to hold also.
Okay, so there's a motion with amendments to move the subject article number 3 up into the first paragraph and to add Mrs. Winslow to the present and to the polled vote.
Both poll votes.
Both polled votes, right. Both polled.
Right.
Say that
This is
3
one
times
in the back
fast.
too, Madam Chair, to adjourn.
There's actually 3 then.
Right.
2 on the front, 1 on the back. All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. Accepted and held. Thank you.
You're welcome, Madam Chair.
I'm going to hold off just for a second on the Wareham Affordable Housing Trust and go quickly to the application from the Wareham Village Association, please. Is there a representative?
Saw them somewhere.
Yes, there is. Please come forward.
Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Just like to note, if you want to get something done ahead of time, ask Mrs. Lindsay. She's already got her brochures ready for July.
Actually, that's a copy of last year. This year,
Oh,
just
you didn't
started
have to
working on.
fess up on that.
I want to note that under license and permits that they have a rain date of the 16th. That's incorrect. It's the 10th. It'll be the following day.
Okay, we have permit effective July 9th, 2011, rain date.
Should be the following
July
next
10th.
day.
Right. They did it right on our paper, I guess. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the application from the Wareham Village Association, care of Jackie Lindsay, 208 Rear Main Street, Wareham, Mass., for the use of Merchants Way for the 15th Annual Swan Festival on Saturday, July 9th, 2011,
Yes, please.
from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. with a rain date of
It's the 10th. Sunday
Jul-
the 10th.
Sunday, July 10th.
Yes, please.
It is understood and agreed,
Oh.
the town.
It is understood and agreed that the town will be held harmless from all liability as to damage to property or injuries to any person.
Second.
Does anyone have any questions from Jackie, if I may?
I don't have any questions. Everybody understands the map layouts and what we do. We pass out a map to each person that comes. We do a 12-page color brochure, which lists all our vendors and anybody that attends that day or supports us through grants and sponsorships.
And this is the 15th anniversary of it?
This will be the 15th anniversary.
Oh,
And I'm
pretty
still
amazing.
accepting applications.
Wonderful.
They've already started coming in. They started coming in February this year.
Great.
Yeah, so that's a good sign.
Very
very
good.
good. So there's a motion and a second on the floor. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank
We're
you.
looking forward to July. I'm going to move across this town administrator's report and go to a happy, sad proclamation that we had planned to read earlier on. But this proclamation is for Dr. Charles Sherman Gleason, whereas he endeavored throughout his life to bring the highest level of professional health care as a pediatrician to the town of Wareham. Whereas Dr. Gleason's life's journey has been centered upon a compassionate approach to human services and helping Wareham families. Whereas Dr. Gleason dedicated his life to families of Wareham and demonstrated a loving and caring touch to the delivery of thousands of Wareham babies. Whereas Dr. Gleason exhibited passion for life's work, whether it was leading the campaign for the YMCA or providing his expertise on the Wareham Board of Health or taking photographs or a project with his grandchildren on a nature trail. Dr. Gleason always delivered with the charm of a true gentleman. Whereas Dr. Gleason always put community, humanity, and family first. He truly had a penchant for public service. In witness thereof, we, the Board of Selectmen, have hereunto set our hands and caused the official seal of the town of Wareham to be affixed this 15th day of March 2011. The proclamation has been delivered to Dr. Gleason's family. Next item on the agenda is a meeting with the Swift Beach Homeowners Association. Would you like to come forward and introduce yourselves, please?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Can you hear me? I'm Kate Furler from the Swift Beach community. I chair the subcommittee for the beach preservation for the Swift Beach Improvement Association. You have us listed as the Swift Beach Homeowners Association. It's different. It's the Improvement Association, which is a 501c nonprofit corporation. We at Swift Beach are interested in having our beach protected. We were delighted when the town meeting voted to have a conservation restriction placed on the property purchased with the CPC funds. We waited while a holder was sought. We were told that a nonprofit agency was required to hold the CR. Numerous agencies began the process, but for various reasons, none arrived at the final stage of applying to you, the Board of Selectmen of Wareham. We, the local 501c nonprofit organization charged with improving our area, decided to apply ourselves. We contacted the CPC, and they provided us with a draft that was begun with another agency. Using that format, we adapted the document to fit us. We are now applying to be the holder of that CR. Our only agenda is to protect our beach, to arrange to get the unsightly bits cleaned up, and to allow all of Wareham to enjoy one of the loveliest part of our town. Let me introduce you to Ray Davis, who is our president of our association.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you for the work you and the committee have done, and thank you, Board of Selectmen, for hearing us today. My name's Raymond Davis. I'm president of the association, and I'd like to tell you a few things about the association. Swift Beach is quite a secluded area. There's only one main paved road going down to the beach and nowhere else to go, so it's very quiet and peaceful there. And the association was formed about 75 years ago in order to provide activities for those who reside there in the summer. And it was incorporated as the Swift Beach Improvement Association, but you have to be a homeowner there in order to join, though I think we stretch that point a little sometimes, and certainly visitors attend all of our functions with no restriction. The association, as I said, was formed to provide entertainment, and we do that in many ways. We have a parade on July the 4th, which blocks our streets pretty effectively for a while. And then we, at the end of the summer, have a field day, which is attended by many who are, I'm sure, not from Swift Beach, but they have a good time, and races are run from age of 2 to, they don't have an octogenarians one, so unfortunately I don't run these days, but they do have for senior members and so on. We also have, during the summer, bingo on a Monday night for adults and Tuesday night for children. These are well supported. We also have functions on a fortnight, excuse me, I haven't mastered the language yet. Every 2 weeks we have a dinner or other function for persons staying there, and anyone can attend. The association is very firmly established. It has over 100 members, just over 100 members. We don't know how many this year because it's only this week that we sent out the dues until they pay. We don't know exactly how many members we shall have, but it was over 100 last year. We're in a sound financial state. We have no debt. We have a small amount of cash, something like $4,000 or $5,000 for emergencies, and we live pretty much hand to mouth, except that we have some property that was left to us in the 1940s by a member, and this property is without any debt too. And we use that for our meetings. It's closed down right now because we shut it down for the winter when the residency becomes quite small. We're a very sound organization. We have a good board of directors, and as I said, the members are very active. Members are have a wide variety of experience. Many of our members owned businesses before they retired, and are very familiar with dealing with awkward customers, especially if they ran a restaurant or something like that. So they know how to deal with people. We have some talent too in the scientific area. Kate has a degree in biology, and we have another member who's also on this committee but not here tonight. This is a young man who's graduating this year with a degree in marine biology. But we don't limit ourselves to that, and we would appreciate very much any residents of the town who have knowledge of this kind of project and would like to give us their advice. So I'd like to thank you again for listening to us, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
And this is Joan Goldfarb from the neighborhood.
I wanted to read to you the Swift Beach Improvement Association preamble of what our organization is about. We, the property owners and other interested parties of Swift Beach, Wareham, in appreciation of the fact that cooperation must bring accomplishment, hereby unite in the association to endeavor to secure the necessary betterments and improvements to promote a clean social life and high standard of community interest at Swift's Beach, to include as a charge land preservation, conservation, recreation, and open space preservation, to include the management and administration of conservation restriction agreements placed or to be placed on relevant properties within the care and concern of the Swift Beach Improvement Association, or assigned to the Swift Beach Improvement Association by any land agency, land group, or government, including the municipality of Wareham and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and enact, declare, and establish the following as our bylaws and our future rules of government.
Thank you.
So we've come before you tonight for your approval and signatures, and hoping that you will approve us to be the conservation restriction holders of the property at Swift Beach.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Furler, Ms. Goldberg, or Mr. Davis?
Madam Chair, I don't have
Mrs.
any.
Winslow?
I don't have any questions of the Swift Beach, the representatives from Swift Beach. I have some other questions, but none of them are for them.
Okay. Are they for the board?
The board, Mr. Andrews.
Well, I would, if I may, Madam Chair, I would like to thank you for stepping up. I think we all know that there have been various entities that had the possibility of holding it, and in my opinion, for political reasons, one side or the other decided not to. And I think that this would be a perfect marriage, because if you have the community down there, if this is what your charge is, this is what you've been doing for 75 years, and to solidify that and codify that, I think that that is fantastic. And I'm sure after you stop here, you'll probably be going to conservation, and then it will be put up to the state, so there'll be approvals. This isn't the final. There'll be a couple of other steps, if I'm not mistaken. So, but thank you all, really, because I think the townspeople, since 2003, maybe 2004, I think it was when they started with this, and it has been a long time that it's been going back to town meeting, and for various reasons or whatever. And I know most recently was to actually get a restriction on it. So thank you. Thank you for doing this for all of our community. I know you guys get a little extra benefit because you're closer to it, but even though I'm from the other side, I've been down there before, and it is a beautiful, beautiful beach. So thank you.
I'd just add my thanks to you as well. I think that town meeting has voted over and over again to make sure that this 7 miles of area is preserved as open space and for use by all of the public, and to be held that way in perpetuity with a conservation restriction, and that you're willing to take on that responsibility with your organization is very commendable. And again, I think that you do have an even more personal interest in taking the charge on, and I commend you for that. It's well done. Mrs. Winslow, would you like to?
Oh, well, my first question through you to Madam Chair is to Mr. Andrews. Has our council reviewed and approved the proposal as to form?
Council has been aware of this matter for some time, given the background of the matter, and
Let me be a little more clear. Did they review this specific document and approve it as to its form?
not at this present time.
Okay. Madam Chair, I would make a motion to table this and ask Mr. Andrews to have council review and approve the document before we sign it.
If I could, Madam Chair, just as a footnote to my previous, I just want to make myself clear. We have talked about this with town council. We have searched, and I have worked with the CPC to find an appropriate entity to take charge of the matter, and given the cutbacks at the state level, that was not possible. So
let me just be clear, my objection is not with the proposed holder. I want to ensure that the legal interests of the community are protected.
You know, Mrs. Winslow, I agree with you, but I would think that rather than holding this off and tabling it, I would suggest that perhaps we approve it as we did with, I think it was a liquor license earlier in the year, that we approve it upon the approval of, with the condition that it's approved by town council. Didn't we do that before? I think that was
Well, that was because the Blue Book had some conflicting information. This is a document that's in perpetuity, and it puts a great deal of responsibility upon the association. And I think that a document such as this should be reviewed by council before we make any motion to approve it. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know what you know.
like.
If you, I'm also a member of the committee, Bruce Savageau, for the record. If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to respond. This document, as drafted, is the pro forma language that's being utilized was presented and given to us by CPC, which this language has been vetted over and over and over again. In fact, it was presented to us in 4 different scenarios, and we utilized those documents to draft this instrument. So all we did was remove information that was extraneous or not relevant to this particular parcel of land, and include information relevant to the land, including the legal description and the votes of town meeting and the map, and also the, I guess I would call it the environmental report that was commissioned by the CPC. Relative, and all of those documents are submitted, and this language, again, has been vetted over and over and utilized by CPC, and they're the ones that gave us this language. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Winslow.
I completely understand. I'm not saying that I have a particular issue with the language. I'm simply saying that I am not going to be comfortable with a document such as this that has not been approved by our council.
Well,
I'd like our council to look at this and approve it before we vote on it. I mean, this situation has gone on for many, many years. I don't know what the rush is tonight. I would think the association would want council to review this document and ensure that it's correct, it's legally binding, it's enforceable.
we agree that we want the document to be legally vetted, but that has not traditionally been the role of town council. That has been the role of the state. The state is the one who reviews this document for its entirety, completeness, legal character, and town council is merely vetting language that it has seen repeatedly and often and over again. The state, once the Board of Selectmen approves this, once the Conservation Commission approves this, it goes off to the state for their review, and they will vet the document. thoroughly.
If I may, Madam Chair, through you, so it's the, because I said it went up to the state, so it's the DCR, the Department of Conservation and Recreation?
I'm sorry, yes,
Is
that's
that,
correct.
in
Yep.
fact, okay, I just want to make sure, because I know that that was,
It's reviewed by their legal counsel, it's reviewed by their staff, and then ultimately it is signed by the secretary.
because that was the one that I know that we had, the ones up in Great
Great
Neck
Neck.
area that we had,
Right.
that's where they had
And
to go
as
also.
far as rush, we're certainly not rushing anything. This has been 7 years. We're simply submitting what has been protocol. When I sat on your side of the table, I vetted a couple of dozen conservation restrictions, and the protocol was whoever was holding it would submit it. We would forward that, or they would, to conservation. It would be forwarded to the state for their vetting, and the secretary would deliver either a signed document with comments and any changes that were required or not. So a rush, it's 7 years down the road. We're not rushing. We're just meeting protocol.
Madam Chair, my thought on this is that, and I'm sorry, Mr. Holmes, did you have a?
I did.
Okay, go
But
ahead.
if you
No.
want to...
Go ahead.
Mr. Holmes.
And that's all fine, Bruce, and through you, Madam Chair, to the association. I understand what you're saying, but here's where I'm sitting from. I got this document on Friday afternoon. So you say it's been going on for 7 years. I just got this on Friday. We just spent, I think it was 2 weeks ago, an evening here interviewing the guy who wrote the book on land, and he now works for the town, correct? You say that you've spoken to people with our town council, correct? General terms, but you didn't show them the document, and there's no written acceptance by them yet at this point. So, I also understand that this parcel, and I don't have a lot of detail on this, but my understanding on this parcel is that it was purchased with CPC money. Is that correct?
No, that's
Madam
not
Chair.
legally accurate. It wasn't
Wow.
purchased with CPC money. CPC utilized the $1.1 million in return for a conservation restriction,
But
The
currently the town owns this land.
and will
Is that correct?
and will in perpetuity. The
Yes.
town will continue to own the land. The conservation restriction does nothing more than allows an organization to oversee the property, its management, its care in accordance with the laws that protect that land already under the guidance of the Conservation Commission. They're the
Excuse
legal
me. Excuse me. Could you please refrain? Thank you.
my profile's better on the other side. They're the legal authority in this matter, the Conservation Commission, who we would report to as holders of the CR. As far as this is not a crafted document, meaning it's not originated by us. Language was given to us that CPC has utilized frequently. We just amended the language to be specific to the parcel, and that is really it. CPC has seen this language repeatedly, and the state and the Conservation Commission has certainly seen this language repeatedly, and the state certainly has seen the same language repeatedly. I would characterize it almost as pro forma language.
And Madam Chair, if I could, through you to Mr. Andrews, am I understanding correctly that your conservation agent has talked to the state, and that they said that the town could actually hold this conservation restriction? Did they not get a waiver for that through your Mr. Pichet?
Yes, I believe so, at the conservation level, given the fact that there was no real appetite for the state agency to play a role in the process going forward.
So, is that not correct? Mr. Pichet, the town could actually hold this themselves.
The town
Did they
can,
not get a...
if I may, Madam
wait a minute.
Chair.
Please, Mrs. Ekstrom.
It is
Can you
a-
just let him, just 1 second, let him finish?
I believe the town can sponsor it, but you need an appropriate entity like this group to be able to step forward and take the
So Mr. Pichet
responsibility.
did not get any waiver in this
I
case?
don't know of that to be the case at this point.
Madam Chair, if I may, to answer Mr. Holmes, the way it was described to us, if I get this correctly, I believe Mr. Pichette did contact the state, but it was not on an issue of holding the CR. It was on an issue of the waiver, and he contacted the DOR, not the environmental agency. And the issue with the DOR was whether or not they would waive the requirement that a conservation restriction be held, because under the rules, under the law, under the DOR rules, any money expended by CPC for the purpose of a conservation restriction there is a requirement that that CR be held. To go right to the point of the matter, we certainly didn't request that because we are willing as an association to hold it, so the community does have a holder if they want it. Secondly, as far as the DOR is concerned, the town meeting voted for this. So personally, in my opinion, that is circumventing the will and the wishes of town meeting. The town meeting voted for a CR. We're presenting a holder adequately to hold that CR. We will follow the protocol as has always been followed, and we were advised to follow. We're using standard protocol language, and the state is the vetting agency that will look at language to determine whether or not it meets the state requirements. We're eager and ready. We're certainly able, under the direction of the Conservation Commission, the Board of Selectmen's approval, and I don't mean to diminish your role, but I've been in this role. I was in your role many times in this same exact situation. As long as the Conservation Commission and the state we were following the proper protocol and procedures, the Board of Selectmen generally supported it, and it would be, frankly, the first time in Wareham CPC history that a Board of Selectmen would not support a CR if, in fact, the CR. That's not in any way to pressure you. It's just to suggest that there has been a long history here.
Madam Chair, if I could.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean
That's
to...
all right. If I'm understanding correctly, in my own personal space here as a selectman, all I'm saying to you is, I got this on Friday, Bruce. Okay? So, Mr. Andrews has spoken to our town council. This property has had a lot of history.
Yes, certainly has.
Just as a casual reader several years ago, I also know that many organizations, I'm not going to go into all this negative stuff, but there have been issues here. And quite frankly, I don't have an issue with the Swiss Beach Improvement Association holding this CR. I don't have an issue with that, so it wouldn't be that for me. What I would like to see happen is, I'd like to have Mr. Andrews, we just hired a guy who wrote the book on this stuff. Let him have a look at this, make sure that it's clean, because for sure, there is to be a suit coming down the road here against the town. You know that, and I know that.
There isn't.
And I would just like to make sure that as a board, when we vote this, that we have solid, legal, written authority and approval by town council before we sign our names to this. That's all I'm saying. And I think that's fair.
Well, it's certainly the
for the
board's
board.
prerogative to protect the town
If
and
the board votes that way, but I'm in favor of doing that.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mrs. Ekstrom?
Well, I previously, to Mr. Holmes' comment, it is illegal for a landowner to hold the deed restriction to its own property. That's just the way it is. And Mr. Savageau correctly put it that it was the DOR to see if we could get a waiver under the CPC requirements of it.
Because we use CPC money as part
To
of
buy the deed
as part of
restriction.
the purchase, correct?
Right, well, the settlement, the deed restriction. I mean, and just, for my own 2 cents, we usually get our packets on Friday, so we've had this, and it's...
I got it on Friday, Brenda.
Right.
Right.
But that's what I'm
I did
saying,
read it over
is
the
that
weekend.
Huh?
I did read it over
No,
the
that,
weekend.
but that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying, is that it's not usually like we have things for weeks in advance or whatever.
All I'm
The
say-
Great Neck restrictions, we get those usually on Friday as well. So, I mean, it's not, because I just wanted to clarify, because the way that it sounded was like, almost like, especially Sina had said that it was rushed or whatever, that's a normal time frame for us.
I'm not saying that
So,
through you, Madam
no, and
Chair.
I didn't, I
All
just
I'm
wanted to
saying
make
is
it
I got it
clear.
on Friday. This particular piece to me, Mrs. Ekstrom, has had a lot of seagulls swirling around it, and all I want to do is, before I put my name on it, I just want to have Mr. Andrews check with Mark, the gentleman who was here the other night, and if he gives it a glowing go, I don't have a problem with it. But I want to make sure I have that. And I think I'm entitled to, if I... I'm entitled to that before I put my name on it.
If I could, please, I know Mrs. Winslow, you would like to speak, but if I could just address that statement and the packet in front of us. This packet has been vetted. It is a standard package that
Who vetted it, Madam Chair?
it was vetted by a number of other organizations who use the exact same language in their conservation restrictions. The only difference between this package and those packages is that this one is now specific to Swiss Beach. This packet is, I can tell you, as Mr. Savageau said, it's the same package that was brought up to 3 or 4 other groups of people who thought they might be willing to hold the restriction, but then changed their mind. So it's not that they didn't like the packet, it's just that they decided not to hold the restriction. So the packet is in and of itself not new. Okay? It's the same packet. It's gone from...
So, Madam Chair, if I could interrupt you then, I may actually change my mind altogether if that's a fact. Are you saying this is the same packet that went to the Fish and Wildlife Group?
Yes.
W-
The only change is
I
that...
understand that there were some changes made to the betterment here by the Swiss Beach Group.
There's
That
no
made it more
betterment.
acceptable to the town.
There's
to
no
supporters.
There's no betterment on the property.
No, I mean it made it more palatable to the townspeople. I
We-
understand you made some changes here that were better than that's what I meant by better.
Oh, better. Better.
It's better
Yeah.
than what was sent to the Fish and Let me just clarify that. It's no better. Well, if we could get a betterment out of here, that would be fine too.
Oh, no, no more betterment,
like
please.
But I
Do it,
understand
Commissioner.
this is better. Now you're saying this is the same one?
No, what we did was extract any information that would have been specific to Fish and Game, and just use the generic or general language that all. And Mrs. Donahue's correct in the sense that there were 4 other qualified agencies that reviewed the language of the CR and never objected to the language, never sent back comment or issue with the specific language. They can speak for themselves why they didn't want to hold the CR, but it certainly wasn't the language or the document itself. So in that sense, it's been vetted 5 times.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Winslow.
thank you. Part of my concern with this conservation restriction is that the Improvement Association is not what you would call a traditional holder of something like this. Usually the state or a land trust or somebody like that holds a conservation restriction. And I understand that the state vets these things, but it's our job sitting here to look out for the best interest of Wareham. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts look out for the best interest of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I'm not going to rely on them to do what I should be doing here. And I don't think that, and I'm not sure how long it would take for town council to take a look at this. It's not that complicated of a document. And as Mr. Holmes said, this new firm that we just hired has this gentleman, attorney, who's supposed to be exceptional at these types of issues. So I would imagine that somebody of his caliber could probably look at this fairly quickly and give us any revisions or changes that he feels may be required, or just give it a stamp of approval.
Madam Chair, if I may just briefly.
Certainly.
We certainly want to protect the town. Obviously, that's our interest as well, because that protects us. As far as vetting it, I believe the CPC has very competent counsel that has vetted many of their restrictions, including the language that you're looking at. I'm certain that your new counsel has an expert, but I know CPC certainly has their legal expertise that they've drawn on as well. As far as other agencies, we would have been delighted to have any one of the 4 agencies that you referred to hold this restriction. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, that didn't happen. I'm not suggesting we're the last best effort remaining, but I believe we are, certainly as an organization, more than qualified to do what we are there to do, which is nothing more than keep eyes on the property that is being destroyed as we speak. I mean, there has been wholesale tampering with that property in the last year. There's been trees cut, vegetation cut, there's been vehicles all over the beaches, there have been boulders removed to access the upper land piece and literally destroy those dunes. So our function is merely to report to the police, report to the Conservation Commission, to be eyes on the property, and to do really nothing more than that, except for when we apply for possibly CPC funds to make improvements to that land. It's being degraded, and without a CR, it will just continue to be degraded. The real problem, of course, legally, since you've raised legal issues, is what happens if there are no CR holder. You know, the DOR may give us a pass, but that doesn't mean that any developer can't take this issue before a court and say, there's no reasonable CR here, no language that protects that land whatsoever. So we are acting in the best interests of the town, and I believe that this language has been more than properly vetted, quite frankly. But I do respect your opinion.
Thank you, Mr.
Madam
Savage.
Chair, I wasn't suggesting that. If I could through you to Mrs. Furler.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have a copy of the last section from that BSC group? Do you have a copy somewhere?
Yes, I have it right here.
Is yours as lousy as mine? Or do you
Yes.
have? Oh, it is.
It's very light.
You don't
print.
have a better copy somewhere, do you?
No, this is the only copy that I have.
I can give you mine.
Have you got a clean copy? I'd like to
Yeah.
get a copy. This was really awful. I tried to read it, and
This is
It
the
just didn't-
ecological report you're referring to?
yeah, the back section.
I have
I
I
just
have a
want it
copy.
for my own personal. I don't need it right this second.
I'll give it to you.
And again, Madam Chair, I'm not. I think that, probably, I agree that with just about everything that's been said. Although now I think I'd like to go back and look now that you told me that's the same one, because I heard the Swiss Beach group had a better one. But I just want to make sure that he gets to sign off, and then I'll feel comfortable with my name. I don't have an issue.
All right, thank you, sir.
But I would like to be comfortable because of the history here. I don't
Absolutely.
need to be.
Well,
Run-
if I
run
could,
into
you're right,
courtrooms.
sure, and I understand your concerns, Mr. Holmes, about the history, but the bottom line of the history, when all was said and done, was that this property was to be put under a CR.
Understood.
And so we're here with a willing holder, potential holder, who's using a CR that's been pro forma with the previous CRs. And if there were any issue with this CR, as suggested, it has 2 more hands to go through. It also has to go to the Conservation Commission, and then it has to go to the state. And I don't think that this group would be sitting before us if they didn't feel like their document was ready to stand the test of those 2 double checks, if you will, or the next steps that have to be taken. So I don't really see any. I don't have a very high level of comfort with the piece of paper that's in front of us, or the number of pages that are in front of us, and the number of times that this issue has been reviewed. I mean, we were this far away with DEP. I mean, Fish and Wildlife. I mean, we were this close with them, and we're really still not sure why they didn't decide to accept it. But this should go right through the process with flying colors, regardless of whether or not we stop the process and have somebody else look at it. So I would be very much in favor of moving it forward. Summertime is coming, and we could have this all through before the summer folks show up. And as Mrs. Goldfarb stated, the vast majority of the people in the Swiss Beach area who belong to the Improvement Association, the homeowners there, would be very well served by our moving this forward before the summer comes, and for them to be able to have the authority to watch over the property the way Mr. Savageau has suggested. So I would be very much in favor of moving this forward this evening.
Mrs. Donahue, there's stuff that's happening that is quite dangerous. There's a fence that is falling down that nobody has any authority to get fixed until there is this CR in place.
Right. Those are the kinds of things that I'm alluding to, that, you know, if we started moving through the process, by the time our wonderful summer visitors come down to us, we would be ready to use the authority that you would have to be able to protect the beach further. So that's again why I'm very much in favor of moving the paper forward now. And I'd really love to have my name on it, personally. That's a little selfish of me, but I've watched this.
Madam Chair, you
go.
can pull at my heartstrings, but I'd really,
Come on, you just gave me flowers.
I really would feel more comfortable, and I understand it. I'll tell you, you know, when we do pass it, and it shouldn't take that long, maybe I'll make a motion at that time to make you an honorary signature to the paper.
How about if we
You
were
and
to
Mrs.
how about
Ekstrom.
if we were to entertain a motion that we signed it pending the attorney's review, and then it could move forward to conservation? Would that be acceptable to everybody?
I think that.
Well, Madam Chair, my concern with that is that the attorney may make changes, significant changes to the document, which often happens with attorneys.
Well, like I think several of us have said, this has been through the attorneys, through the attorneys, through the attorneys. I don't think there's going to be any significant changes. Personally, I just don't see that happening. It's been vetted 4 or 5 times. It's been through the process and up to 4 different places for people to look at it. So,
Well,
I
Madam
mean, pending the approving it pending the review, basically does the same thing as tabling it until they do review, if you're going to approve it anyway.
And Madam Chair, to Mrs. Winslow's concern, if there were substantive changes, we would
have to come
we would
back.
accept them, and we would have the document amended to reflect them, and we'd move it on the process.
Well,
And if
can I respond to that, please? Mr. Savageau, I more than appreciate the willingness of your association to take on this responsibility. However, there could be changes that are significant that could have an impact on the association. I mean, to say that you would accept them willingly is I understand your sentiment, but any type of significant change would need to be voted on by your board to ensure that that's something that you're in agreement with.
Obviously, if we were put at risk or peril by the change in the document, we'd certainly want to do that. I believe Mrs. Donahue is correct. We're not going to see those kind of changes, and if they happen, well then, fine, all bets are off. But in the event that they don't happen, which is more likely, as a matter of process, it would satisfy your concerns, I believe, if we had this vetted by council, have the board approve it so that we could go to the Concom and say, hey, the Board of Selectmen supported it pending review by council, which makes actually sense to me. And I tend to agree with you. But as a matter of process, there's no reason to kick this down the road 7+ years plus another 2-3 weeks. I'm just suggesting that we can get this in place in the process without much delay by having your suggestion implemented, which is to have council review pending your approval.
I would feel much more comfortable voting on a document that had been through council that contained any changes. We're talking about a document that's in perpetuity.
It is. It's a conservation restriction. That's exactly what the point is.
It's a very serious. it's a very serious.
As-
Madam Chairman, excuse me.
Mrs. Ekstrom?
Could you make the statement again of the motion that you were looking for? Because I think that, I think it makes sense. I think that when these go to conservation, conservation has them reviewed by council. The conservation agent is, probably more familiar with these than anyone else here. And so I would think that having us approve it, pending the approval of council, and I don't care if it's a semicolon to a period, if there's a change in it, and it's anything that is going to affect really almost anything, it has to come back here anyway. So if you could make your statement, I'll move the statement, because I think that if there is any change, it has to come back. It would have to go back to conservation as well. It would have to go back to the Improvement Association as well. So, and then I think it would satisfy Mrs. Winslow's, wanting the vetting of it from council. I think it would satisfy Mrs. Donahue's signing it, because if it doesn't go through, if council has any issues with it, it would come back to this board.
Well, I said I would entertain a motion to approve the conservation restriction on the property, with the holder being the Swiss Beach Improvement Association, pending review by council.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second?
Huh?
I'll second it.
Oh, there's no second. Then you know what? Actually, I would say.
I said I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
Very sorry.
Please don't apologize. Thank you for entertaining us. Do you have any instructions for us further?
Well, I have a motion. Then I have another motion. I would move that the board sends this to council, and Mr. Andrews, if you could have council review this and tell them that we'd like it back, hopefully by Friday, so it could be on the next agenda. That would be my motion.
Second.
Would you like us back Tuesday?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstained?
410.
It's 410.
And I also would like to just make it put on the record that the sentiments of the selectmen that have no objection to this, that are in favor of it, and just want it vetted by council before they approve it. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I've made
Thank
that
you very
notation for council.
Do you need us
Thank
back
you, Mr.
Tuesday
Andrews.
or no?
It would probably be a good idea.
All right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next item on the agenda this evening is a discussion with Walmart regarding the sewer capacity.
Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the board. My name's Ed Angley. I represent Walmart, and I have Matt Smith, our engineer. And it's my understanding that it was determined that there is capacity in the sewer plant, and we'd like to get an allocation. But I understand that at the last meeting, there was some question as to whether there was an agreement with Walmart.
Does anyone have any questions? Discussion?
Mr. Holmes, do we have a number?
I wasn't, I'm sorry, I wasn't here last week. Mr. Campini,
No.
through you to Mr. Campini.
Actually, no, I was asking you because the concern was what the capacity that someone else wanted to, was going to need, and I thought you were meeting with them, with A.G. Makins for the BJOD.
Right.
Because
For the total
that's-
number, right?
Do we have a number from them?
Could we ask Mr. Campini to come forward, Madam Chair? Is that okay?
Yes.
Good
Thank
evening,
you.
Madam Chair,
Oh, he's already coming.
Board.
There were two questions then, I guess, Guy, for you. One was, we had that discovery session with AD Makepeace, right?
Exactly. We had that.
They
meeting
gave
with
you some
Makepeace.
documents to review
Yes.
for futuristic numbers.
Yes, we're committed to 50,000 gallons, which we gave them, and everything else.
Current.
There's no.
That's current.
That's current.
Right.
And that's it. Everything else will be discussed in the future. 50,000 is all that's we're committed to. Absolutely. In the meeting we had, that was attended by myself, Mr. Holmes, and Mr. Andrews.
Right, but there was also a document, I don't have a copy of it, but there's a futuristic number that if they were to build out everything that was built out, everything they could build out.
125,000 gallons if they built everything out. However, that is not guaranteed, and they would come to the board and ask for gallons as they needed them.
Now,
They
was that
also
one-
agreed to work
excuse
with
me,
us.
Shortings. Now that 125, I seem to recall something in that neighborhood. Was that, there were two numbers. There was one higher than this. One included the 50 and one didn't.
Correct. You take the 50, which they're committed to. There's a possibility of an additional 125,000 gallons in the upper pot.
That they may be requesting
That they
at
may
some
be
point in the
requesting,
future.
but again, let me emphasize, they said they may be requesting. Also, at that same meeting, we discussed a possibility of another treatment plant building at their cost or our cost. So my point is that 50,000 gallons is all that we're committed to at this moment, and everything else is on the table, but no guarantees. They understand to be no guarantee. They will request every other gallon beyond that they would require.
So
And through you, Madam Chair, to Mrs. Ekstrom, the second part of the conversation was about the agreement. And they did agree, we haven't met again, obviously, but they did agree that they would change that unlimited number. Now, Mrs. Winslow was there, Mr.
That's
Campini,
right.
Mr. Andrews, so if I misspeak, please correct me. They did agree in principle to change that language to say that they would be an upper limit, not to exceed number. And it was based on those futuristic plans. So I don't want to quote this 125 number, Mrs. Ekstrom, because I don't have we were supposed to receive the documents. Have you received
I received no
packets?
documents. No, I haven't.
Mr. Winslow, did you get?
Mr. Holmes, no. My recollection at the end of the meeting was that at some time in the future we would sit down with the agreement and
Right.
come up with and that not to, but that hasn't happened yet. I don't think they even indicated where they would be at, if they were on the higher end of their proposal and the lower end, or even in the middle.
Well, it was all built. There was a number. Mr. Andrews, did you get a packet from them?
Well, there were three numbers. They
Right.
based on different scenarios that might occur on the property, and the upper number was if they built it out with a higher soil usage of different things.
Right. And I want to say that was 181.
It was high.
Off the
yeah.
top of my head was 181 minus
The
50.
that
Right.
we've already allocated, which gets you down to 131, which is around about what you're saying. So I
125,
think you and I are on the same page, but we have not received the packets back.
No, I haven't received anything further from them. In fact, I was wondering if
That's what we got for information that day.
That's what we got that day, and they were
do you have a
pretty
copy
adamant
of
about
the
it.
original agreement?
yes, they did. Mr. Holmes, did they give?
And it does
They,
say
I
that
have
we
not,
will
I have
provide
not received any
capacity.
packet of you.
but
they
that's
had-
applicable to
the
only a
agreement was there.
portion.
But I
Yes.
haven't received a packet.
That's applicable to the B.2, which is approximately 300 acres,
Right.
65 acres of which are buildable uplands. So whatever they can fit on 65 acres is the capacity that they're looking at. If the top number that they're looking at, if they're counting, my understanding is the 50,000 that we've already allotted them is
Right.
either in the B.1 or not in the B.1 at all, because it was strip commercial up the front or something. So that, forget that. If we're looking at 131,000 gallons that we are going to be required, or if that, even at their high number, that's what their estimates is, and the contract or the agreement with the town, which is a 100-year agreement, so they don't have to do this now. They could do it in 5, 10, 50 years from now. It says that the town will provide capacity.
Right.
Now, that's nice that if they're talking about the possibility of doing a separate package treatment plant, the last upgrade Well, the first one cost us, what, $10-20 million in the 70s. The upgrade cost us $24 million. That was on the backs of the taxpayers. If we do a second plant, it's going to be on the taxpayers' backs. I thought we were going to get real numbers before we approved this, so
Right,
Reassured
and I
us.
also had a question, Madam Chair, through you. If I recall, it's not on the thing, but what is the number that you're looking for this new Walmart Supercenter?
10,000.
No, it was less than
9,000.
10,000
Yes,
for a
less than
reason, I
10,000.
believe.
I believe it was 9,600 and some odd gallons. At ballpark, but I believe that's what they're looking for. I've got the actual numbers, but that's what they're looking for, which is
Just
and
below
is-
the 10,000 gallons
Absolutely.
of the
Yeah,
safe
10,000
MEP
gallons.
zero
falls-
nitrogen.
It falls
Yeah.
just below this 10,000 magic number.
That's right.
And surprisingly enough, I was just sitting with somebody today who happens to be a Walmart employee. I won't mention his name. But it was interesting that he brought up, and I hadn't thought of this before, that this is actually a superstore that you're proposing there. And is this proposed store to be open 24 hours a day? Oh, you wouldn't know that. But
Right, they don't know.
you don't believe so, but you don't know.
This is not, this is smaller than the previous prototypes. Walmart is trending to a smaller store. The one in Plymouth is 225,000 square feet.
I'm just, I'm not confident that this 9,600 number is accurate.
Madam Chair?
If I may, our engineers have put their stamp on it, but that's what the number is. They calculated it according to state regulations, and so that is the number.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to say that while I appreciate the fact that Walmart is very anxious, I don't think until we pin down a number on that other agreement that we're in a position to make a decision as far as allocating any additional sewer.
Well, I'm hardly in a position to argue with you, but I'm going to.
Okay.
But it's my understanding that your sewer commissioner director has determined there's capacity in the plant.
If I may, there is absolutely capacity in the plant. We still have a couple neighborhoods that, under a DEP agreement, that we have to sewer. We also have a private agreement with a developer regarding the capacity that they require within that agreement. So we could have 1 million gallons there, but if we've already promised out 1.2 million, this isn't like a 40B. It's not like you get to come in here and take the stuff and then we're left on the hook with it. We have to make sure that what we have and what we've already promised out we have. And that one last agreement, which I agree, it was an irresponsible, backhanded through the door with no one looking agreement. But we're on the hook for it. And so if Mr. Campina is saying that we have 120,000 gallons available, we just heard that that person may need, or that business may need 131 gallons. So we're already going to be in a lot of trouble before we've even finished the stuff. So that's why, while he can say we have the capacity now, Mr. Campina is only looking at the capacity now. Yeah, and on top of that, as far as capacity, there's Bourne, we have, I don't know, like 15,000 gallons or something in Bourne that we have to, under a requirement, an agreement, intermunicipal agreement, that we have to hold for them. They may never hook anything up, and we may have 15,000 gallons or something, or actually I think it's more like 150,000 gallons. Yeah, more like 150,000, that we have to sit aside and we have to have our plant not used because of that agreement. So that, it's not a matter of, my disappointment in it is that it's, as I said, it's very convenient and unfortunate for the town that you got to 9,640 gallons, because the damage that you'll be doing to our waterways if you put in a Title V system, because you don't hit the 10,000, and so you don't have to adhere to the MEPA quotas of the nitrogen. So you put in a Title V, and a whole neighborhood out there that just paid $15,000 or $20,000 each to better their houses, it has been done for naught. So I agree with my colleagues that I don't believe we should, we need to get a real number from the other developer, a contract, a binding contract that says they will not exceed this much before we do it. And if you're going to pursue it and put in a Title V system or your own package plan or whatever, I beg you, because you know I wasn't in favor of this even going over there, but I beg you to have some compassion on this community and on the people that you expect to frequent your store, and put in something that would hit the meet the standards for 10,000 gallons, so you're not poisoning the waterways that the people of this town are paying very dearly to clean.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to table this until we have a final agreement in place with AD Makepeace.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Sorry, gentlemen, we're going to have to put you off one more time.
Do you may I be
Please.
presumptive and ask what that timing might be?
Mr. Campina, Mr. Andrews, Mr. Holmes,
Madam
Mrs.
Chair,
Winslow, did you get a time frame?
I will get with the town administrator this week and set up a follow-up meeting with AD Makepeace.
If you went to call the Selectmen's office by the end of the week, one of the staff may be able to give you an idea of when their meetings are going to be.
We have town meeting coming upon us at the end of April, so
Try to get it before then.
it may be May by the time because we have an agreement we have to renegotiate. It's, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, it exists, and we have an obligation to sit down with the party and renegotiate that agreement in good faith. So, and that may not happen overnight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Madam Chair, seeing the
Well,
time.
we have to do what we have to do, and we have to do what you have.
Right.
That's right.
And that's why I asked you to have compassion on the town. Please.
I may.
Hey, Jimmy.
Exactly. Well, tell Sam's in
Bentonville?
yeah, please.
Mr. Holmes?
Excuse me, Madam
Okay,
Chair.
the next.
I understand we're going to that. Could we just very quickly go to the Affordable Housing Trust in case someone wins
Sure.
and they throw us out of our seats?
Okay. We'll go to the consent agenda, letter C, Wareham Affordable Housing Trust.
If-
Discussion of the appointment process.
If I may, to the board, I would like the board's indulgence. They put the Affordable Housing Trust, the section of it from our bylaws in here. The trust is appointed for 2-year terms. Usually most of our boards are at least 3 years. The trust is 2-year terms. And it is like it ends on June 30th or until such time as a successor is appointed. So people could, you know, essentially if it isn't addressed, could go on. What I was going to ask the board to consider is because these were all appointed at the same time, they were not staggered. And seeing this is a brand new board who just got its organization articles and things together, I was wondering if and I am the Board of Selectmen representative on it, and so I will not be there anymore. If the board would consider taking 2 of the appointments that are still on there and extending them not to expire 2011 to expire 2012, so that if the board changes its makeup, there is at least some continuity there and everything isn't gone on the 30th and then come back, you know, and a new board has to start again, because we've been working on it for over a year now. Like most boards, you know how it's staggered?
So when you, Madam Chair, through you to Mrs. Ekstrom, so when you created this board, all the members were to expire at the same time?
It was created several years ago.
Right.
When we appointed it last year or the year before or whatever, all the appointments were written to expire 2011. They were not staggered.
Oh.
So if we could do...
There's 4 people total? Well, and the Board of
Well,
Selectmen.
there's 4 people and a representative from the Board of Selectmen.
And they were all to expire when?
2011,
Right.
June 30,
The
2011.
whole group?
If I could, though, there's kind of a kicker in this. If you read the language of the term of office, it says they'll be appointed to a 2-year term commencing on July 1st and ending on June 30th, or until such time as a successor is appointed, should said appointment be delayed. So, the way I read this, sounds like there is no end date to the appointment. If somebody wants to stay on the board longer than the 2-year term, they can until such time as a successor is appointed.
So, Madam Chair, through you, we could, in theory, when the June 30th comes up,
They stay in place unless there's somebody else.
they just stay in
Unless we
place.
appoint somebody else, they remain
Right.
there.
And even if we don't do it by June 30th, they're still appointed until such time as we replace them with a new appointment.
Right, and if this board, if there are applicants who have never gone, never interviewed or anything like that, and go and come in front of this board, and this board appoints the new ones or whatever, then, as I said, we've been working for over a year on getting the, you know.
What are you trying to say? You want to stay on that
No,
board? Is that
I
what you-
can't. I can't. I didn't
Is that
run
what
for
you're trying to say?
re-election.
No, I
No,
think
what I'm
she's-
saying
what
is
she's
that
saying is
if more people apply for this board, and the Board of Selectmen elect to turn any of the seats over, or at any time, then there will be no institutional history on that committee. So I was just asking the board if they would consider, as I said, taking a couple of them that are on there now, it would not be me, but a couple of them that are on there now, and extending their terms to 2012, so that even if 2 came up this year and you decided to change them, then 2 would come up next year. So it would work like every other board in town because of the era of the original appointments.
But if you read, Madam Chair, I think I read that the same way. I don't think we have to do anything to make that happen. Do we?
No, in theory, Madam Chair,
Because
through
they
you.
stay on if you don't change them. They stay. It says or until such time a
We
successor is appointed.
we could just let 2 of the terms go the year and not appoint until 2012 to put it back on track.
So just leave 2 of them,
Just leave it.
Just leave 2.
just allow 2 of them to stay on. I mean,
Just
not like you may keep all 3 or 4 of them on or something.
Well,
but I
right,
mean
but-
that 2 of them that you would commit to
Right.
not replacing them, so that there would be some consistency.
Right. And ending on June 30th or
Well,
until
we-
time
Okay.
a successor is appointed.
Okay,
We-
because
we-
I just didn't want it to all,
Right. Yeah,
Have it all
that's
done.
kind of weird that
I mean, I think
but it was new, right?
it was brand new when I was there, and I think that what they did is they put them all. You know how sometimes they'll put
Should be
associate a
staggered.
full member. Right. I think that what they did is they put them all on one date, and that's what we
Right.
did them all on.
Madam Chair?
Okay.
Mr. Cruz?
Yes, okay, going back to the says appointed for 2-year term. So if they're all come up in June, you can go with 2 for 1 year, and you go for the other 2 for 2 years. Then after that, it will be staggered automatic.
That's
And a
what-
successor to me is if
Yeah.
someone resigns and then you need someone to replace them.
Right.
So they'd have to resign for you to
Appoint a successor.
appoint someone else.
Right, but right now, if you do it in June when it comes up,
Well, I
Two-
would say, I
two
didn't
you
mean
do
to
for
like that
one
we
year.
needed it done tonight. I just think,
I think
or leave one on. I think that it's the same idea as what Ms. Winslow
So
said.
then
is
we end up
leave
2
them
every
on.
year on that committee.
after the
We
first,
right,
yeah,
it
after
would
the first
rotate.
appointment of
Okay.
1 year, everything will be 2 years.
Okay.
Then you'll have 2 every 2 years, or every
Alright.
year you'll have 2.
That
All
makes sense.
Excuse me.
Okay.
Are we,
I thought you were asking to stay on in that.
no,
No,
I
I
don't.
might apply though. You never know if there's an opening.
You don't have to wait a year, do you?
No.
Okay, so we have a consensus on that
Thank you.
issue. And it is
As
one
long
that
as-
is, it's a little bit out of the ordinary, the way that it was written, so.
Madam Chair, do we have to replace Mrs. Ekstrom on that
You
board?
will have to.
When,
You will
when,
have
do-
to.
when
When
is
you
there,
guys do your appointments, you guys will have to take all of the positions that...
when is the next meeting?
It would be up to the chair when they put it on there, but I'm
No,
sure... Oh,
of this committee.
Oh, yeah. Second Thursday. So, yeah, next
It's
Thursday.
this week?
Next Thursday.
What was the first Friday? Oh, Friday was the first.
Right.
So have to make a note of that. But
Okay.
Okay, our next order of business, we have with us
14.
Mr. Jim Powers from Powers and Sullivan. Discussion of the 2010 independent audit.
Madam Chair, if I could introduce this item, please.
Please.
Pursuant to the meeting we had last week, and I just want to actually step back a minute, we have, the administration have, and I certainly stand by the audit process as an integral part of our financial administration and the overall process that's consistent with Massachusetts general laws and a number of the projects that we've undertaken. I've asked Jim to come back because I just wanted to be very, very clear on the process, on the recap of the matters that are in the management letter, which, by the way, is still draft in form. Is that correct, Mr. Powers?
Yes.
Thank you. And the way the town goes about its fiscal business, I just want to be absolutely crystal clear about this. I don't intend to, address management items in the media or in any other forum except before this board. That's number one. Number two, I asked Mr. Powers to come back after reading the management letter, which is the report card on the town's activities from a fiscal year ago, which, by the way, slammed up against another fiscal year because, just for the record, to be very, very clear, the fiscal 2009 audit and management letter came in on July 30th of 2010. Is that correct, Mr. Powers?
Yes.
And then the fiscal year 2010 had ended, and that process was complete. So we embarked, and I just wanted to I pulled this out for the record, that we had over 42 items that were on a grid that went through multiple meetings of this board. We have addressed 38 out of 42 items. The one item that was remaining, or one of the several items that were remaining, was the cash reconciliation process that was assigned to the town accountant, and a matter of record, because here's what it is. It's right here. We all have it. It's in your packets. We've been through this. So, and I'm very proud, by the way, of the 38 items that we have addressed in this document, as well as reporting back to the Department of Revenue on their report and integrating into it the financial findings of the management letter from 1 year ago. Is that correct, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. So, and so move the tape forward. We received last Wednesday, unvarnished. By the way, Jim, you brought these up for the board and for the finance committee, and the subsequent financial statements and federal audit findings along with them, just like we did last year. In review of this process,
I'm writing down my questions
in review,
from myself.
in
Then pick it up and put it up there. This is ridiculous. If there's going to be a sixth person in this room on this board, I think we all deserve to know who it is. Damn it. Here, here.
Madam Chair.
I made myself a note so I didn't forget it. I'm just trying to write it down while I'm listening to Mark.
Madam Chair, we follow the same process. No problem. We follow the same process as we did last year, and we will next year. There's not quite hitting cities and towns yet, but federal legislation called Sarbanes-Oxley that requires the information go directly to the Board of Selectmen and the oversight boards, whether trustees or directors of departments. I won't go into detail. It's all history. But we followed the rules directly to the letter of what we have as an audit process, and working very diligently and, by the way, very seriously off of a management letter. I take it very seriously. I want that to be noted. We worked through that meeting, Madam Chair, and I think a number of members said let's digest this. Let's take stock of what is in this management letter, because we did have some issues relative to material concerns and as well as to other concerns in the letter. And by the way, where I come from and the way I treat this process is that you take it upon yourself to challenge the process, that you need to get better no matter how good you are in the process. And that's how I believe the process should work, and it has worked thus far, in my opinion. There were certain instances, certain items in the management letter that caused me concern. I did follow up with Mr. Powers. I think you were at a client on Thursday, with not quite reachable, I guess.
Right.
Is that correct, Jim?
Right.
Okay. So on Friday, we had a very open discussion, which I believe as a town administrator falls underneath my purview. And I had that conversation with Mr. Powers and found that certain parts of the management letter needed to be addressed with respect to personnel actions that I took swiftly and promptly. Move the tape a little bit forward. I want the record to be clear that being said, I worked with Jim and our town council to put together a fiscal recovery plan for the town accountant's office, which is in place. We've had a series of meetings with department heads from last Thursday, Friday, Monday, Tuesday. So this process is clear, it is transparent, and it's, by the way, one by which we will complete, in my estimation, and find the most equitable and efficient way to move forward, like we did off the entire grid. So as 38 out of these 42 items were satisfied and sent to the Department of Revenue, brought before this board, brought before the Finance Committee, I feel very confident that we're going to be able to move forward with Jim's help and his team to be able to satisfy. And by the way, I have written responsibility, Mike, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, to respond to the management letter in writing, and I have a time frame to do that, and that's a normal procedure. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I just wanted to establish those facts for the record, that going forward, we will make certain that whatever items that are in green going forward that are in progress or need to be beefed up, or additional policies and procedures, we will put them in place, and we'll make certain that we meet the expectations of not only this board but the entire town, and working with our auditors who are very expert in this field, I might add, we'll be able to get to those final results and objectives as an end result, and then challenge them again next year to find ways to improve upon other parts of our operations, our fiscal operations, and financial systems to date. So, Jim, that's a long introduction, but welcome back, and I just wanted to be able to, maybe you can brief the board on where things stand as of 5 o'clock this evening, as we've put in place a fiscal recovery plan.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Andrews. Obviously, I went over in detail the management letter last week with the board, obviously the Finance Committee. I was in town today. Mark asked me to attend this meeting in case you had any follow-up questions relative to last week. I think we went into pretty good detail last week, and my answers probably will still be the same. I wouldn't expect to change them at this point in time. What Mark has asked us to do is we're engaged for 2011's audit to do that. What that means is that we don't have to wait until after year-end to audit various transactions of the town. We are going to extend our normal audit procedures to begin the audit of fiscal year 2011 at this point in time, with a focus on cash. Working with the Treasurer's Office, the remaining accounting personnel, IT, all the departments, we've actually made some pretty good progress today, laid out a plan of action to do and reconcile fiscal year 2011. So we know we have a starting point of X at the end of June 30th, 2010, which ties in, right now the financial statements tie into the Treasurer's cash balance, so we have a good starting point, both on the ledger and on the Treasurer's balance. And now Mark has asked us to make sure these entries and these activities have been posted to the ledger through March. And so what we're going to do is, in effect, audit those particular transactions in a lot more detail than we normally would do that. That's normally that would be management's responsibility to provide and have a reconciliation in place to ensure the accuracy and the validity of the numbers. We actually have gone through a lot of, even today, just all from the treasurer's cash book, tied in, I think Kyle had it through February, the warrants that were processed for the year. Tomorrow he should be finishing up getting through March. I worked with Mark today, not the IT Mark, is to give us access to the system. It's inquiry only. We are your auditors. We cannot act as the town accountant. We cannot act as making and approving bills or purchases or changing systems, etc. We do not make entries. If we find something during the audit process that we feel is wrong, we propose those entries to town accountant, to whoever's responsible at this point in time, whether it be Mark or Derek or Judy, etc., in there to say we believe that this transaction has been entered in error. We propose this particular adjustment. It's up to the town to accept or reject our proposed entries. If they accept them with the documentation, they post them and make the correction. That's the process that we're going to go through. We had noticed some things that happened in fiscal year 2011 that, and again, this is all in just a few hours work today, and I expect to be able to, by the end of April or early May, come back before the board to give you a progress status and of where we are relative to the audit for fiscal year 11, so you can have confidence in the numbers of where you are, not only from free cash and what's remaining, but also extend it out to see where you are for budget to actuals this year, both on the expenditures and the revenues, special revenue balances. We talked with many of the department heads and department people today. We listened to their concerns. We will address them from the standpoint of trying to eliminate, assist the town eliminate the remaining points of Mark had from last year, the 42 points, and whatever points remaining from this year. That's our objective. As you know, I'll be happy to come and meet before the board, Finance Committee at any particular time. However, I really won't have a lot of progress reports, I would guess, for at least 2 weeks. Mark will be informed of every step of the way on that plan, or whether Mark or Derek, etc. So they're aware of what we're doing, what we're finding, good or bad, and get to the point where you're on track. And as part of that, as we're developing these additional audit reconciliation procedures, we're going to document those. Say, this is the reports that should be run, this is the process that we followed that worked, and turn that over to whoever is responsible on the town level on a go-forward basis. So that's a function that normally should be and will be required of the particular staff in town hall. So hopefully that will be adjusted. We will still take a look at, as part of this process, we want to get fiscal year 11 done, because I think that's really important to move forward. As I said, I have a good starting point. You want to know where you are for town meeting, for additional projects, budgets. I know money's tight all around, and it has to be tight here. You don't have a lot of money that was left at the end of last year for free cash. So you need to know that in order to make proper decisions. Once we accomplish that, we still, and I might put it on a dual track, once that reconciliation process that we're trying to figure out works, we're probably going to go back and work with Judy back at the accounting, see what she's done for fiscal year 2010, and probably do the same cash proof to hopefully shake out that $919,000. And so we're not ignoring that, but through Mark's suggestion, it was, and I agree with him from the standpoint of, you need to know where you are now. I can't waste the next 6 weeks doing last year, but I'm not going to ignore that. And so the financial statements will still pretty much stay the same. If we happen to figure it out before it's finally issued, obviously we would propose additional adjustments. Again, good or bad. I don't expect the cash to change and the general fund's balance to change. Our management letter won't change even if we find however the amounts went awry. And so that's kind of where we are. We just had an excellent day with the treasurer going through all his records, cash books, which we had access to before, but we're going to a new level of detail, and we're finding things in really good shape relative to that. So that's kind of the plan of action that we have.
Madam Chair, if I could just, because I think it's the most important point. When you get through with this process and through with this fiscal recovery plan that we put in place, how confident are you in closing 2011? Because these are really work papers you're going to use to close 2011.
Well,
so
again, just to correct you from an accounting side.
Okay, please do.
That one of the things that has to be defined is we're independent auditors. We will not be closing your books.
Right.
We will assist you in making sure through the audit process that when you're ready to close, that we have an agreement in effect at June 30th, 2011 with the balances, and we would be ready to complete the audit at a lot earlier time.
Right.
And so that distinction just really everybody has to understand. We only own one thing on the audited financial statements. That's our audit opinion. Everything else in the financial statements is town. It's management. It's management's discussion and analysis. It's management's financial statements. It's notes to the financial statements, etc. What our job as auditors is to give the outside world our opinion as to whether or not management's representations in the form of financial statements are not materially misstated. That's our charge. And so that's, in order to do that, in order for that to still remain that independent, arm's length auditor, that has to be retained. So you're correct from the standpoint of the goal is to close on a lot earlier basis. However, that's a working auditor-client relationship in order to make sure. All the invoices and all the payrolls and all the cash receipts, et cetera, and that postings, it's being done by the staff right now. Those things aren't going to change. So those are the things I can't do. If there's a contract or something that needs to be signed and approved, obviously it's got to go through the normal channels with the approval process, through the selectmen. It's okay to ask your auditor to review something. Do you see anything problematic? But I can't make that decision. I can't make decisions on personnel, whether it's hiring or changing people's roles, responsibilities, etc. And so those type of things, we will make sure we maintain that independent arm's length. The new system is probably going to be things that I suggested today to Mark that may change departments' abilities to manage their budget, take a look at what they need off the system. Still needs some work, but I don't think we're that far off. We're probably, again, that 4 to 6 week period. And hopefully we'll resolve those issues and have a better report than I did last Wednesday.
And Jim, one last question, if I could, Madam Chair, through you.
Please.
Because I've heard there's been a lot of bantering and talk about fiscal 2012. What effect does this have on fiscal 2012, if any?
Well, the biggest effect that you have is that it's the amount of free cash you have remaining. The amount of free cash that was certified by the Bureau of Accounts, Department of Revenue, was based on numbers. You're looking for $2.4 million. You got 1.7. And so they had a cushion, I think I had mentioned to you last week, that they weren't sure of the numbers in the reconciliation, so they were conservative in estimating that. It was $600,000, but we ended up with $919,000 of a drop in fund balance. So there's at least another $200,000-300,000 based on the 1.7, what you've used, and whatever it is, that you have to be very cautious with the remaining amounts. I know the Bureau of Accounts will be looking at that, and so you don't want to get into a negative position. That's why it's really important that fiscal year 11 is our priority right now, as opposed to doing it in October, November timeframe. And so once that's accomplished, you'll have a better outlook to sit back and say, all right, free cash this year, based on last year, where you are right now, it's a point in time, but you also take a look at your budget to actuals seriously. Are revenues coming in higher than budget? If they are, then that'll be a bump to free cash. If they're coming in lower, obviously that would lower your free cash, and the same thing with your appropriations and expenditures and any necessary cutbacks, etc. If everybody spends 100% of their budget, there's no change to free cash because you raised all of those funds. But if there's turnbacks, it's a positive, and if there's, well, you have snow and ice deficits, those type of things that obviously need to be raised next year. It won't affect free cash, but it'll affect what you actually have to raise in taxes. So it has an indirect effect that you always pay next year for snow and ice if you have a deficit, and most places do. And so that will obviously affect what you can legitimately appropriate, and that has to be part of the fiscal year 2012's budget process.
Right, and what we know about snow and ice right now is built into the budget, so we're protected going forward, unless we have a snowstorm sometime in July, I guess, right? Yeah, okay. So your position...
Especially one next week,
so,
this week.
So is it... Jim, just indulge me, because I think this is the important part. We could move forward with the review and processing of the fiscal 2012 spending plan based on what we know, and as I've indicated, this board knows that we're below our expectations purposely on revenue to be conservative, and we've already cut ourselves by 9% internally within departments. So those are things that would hopefully bring on additional savings that would turn into tailings, that would turn into free cash at some point in time, if everything holds along the lines. Is that correct?
That's correct. If you do that, if that's what you've done, in fact, then that will be a positive increase to your free cash. Again, but it depends on what you use from last year. So it's all obviously a balancing act and how to figure out your budget for next year. But those are solid, sound management decisions.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
And if you had any other questions for me through the chair that you'd like to address from last week or anything else that's new, I'm here.
Madam Chair,
Mrs. Winslow.
I have just a couple questions.
Okay.
And they're more just to make sure that I understand.
Yep.
You're not going to be performing the actual duties of the town accountant.
Will not. That is,
Cannot.
I cannot.
Okay. I know that, but I just wanted to make that very clear. That's
Yes.
not what you're here to do.
That is not what we're here to do, and,
Okay.
and we will play no role in that.
And so you'll be working on the reconciliation piece of this, or you're just going to start the audit?
Well, it's kind of the combination of the same thing.
Okay.
When you audit's a lot of judgment,
Mm-hmm.
and then based on the risk, we can cut back procedures that we don't feel is necessary, or we can extend procedures. The risk involved with the town has me extending procedures. That will require, like I said, what we're working on right now today was to get the treasurer's cash book. All the activity that happened from July 1st through the end of March. Well, that's posted of what's occurred. And so what we started off is that let's take something easier, like the warrants that were processed, and let's tie every one of these things in between the accounting ledgers and the treasurer's book to make sure that they all have been entered properly and that the cash is in sync and moving down together.
Okay.
We're also making sure that all the transfers that the treasurer needs to make to fund each warrant also tie in. And those are the accounts that we've gotten through February. And so we're going to take that. If you remember last week, I said there's a lot of activity, but not a lot of activities.
Mm-hmm.
We're picking off each of those activities we're gonna do,
Right.
disbursements, payroll, receipts, and then we'll move on to take a look at the commitments and all the other processes and things that go through the ledger to make sure, and the budget, that'll be part of that process to make sure the budget's been posted up correctly and ties into the recap, which it looks like a lot of it has been. And we're just going to do that double check. And if we find, like I said earlier, something that's problematic, we'll bring that up. We also have to review all the journal entries that were made. And like I said earlier, we have inquiry-only access to all the ledgers online, and whether I'm sitting here at Town Hall or whether we're back at my office. Again, I can't change a thing. The IT security we can't do a thing. We can just look and run reports. And so that's kind of where we are.
And I understand that. Now that you bring up the treasurer, you did say last week that Mr. Foster's accounting and his books weren't really good.
They look like they're in pretty good shape. We haven't had problems with them.
Okay.
And that's
So that's a good jumping off point.
that's a great jumping off point. Yep.
Now, here comes like the uncomfortable question.
Nothing's uncomfortable.
What's this going to cost?
Oh, it's the
Is it part of our?
No, it's not part of that because we were hired to do an audit of your books where your management has performed these particular duties and those reconciliations. Well, we normally would come in and just see whether or not the reconciliations have been performed. We'd take a look at an interim reconciliation, and we'd take a look at the year end. We'd understand the system of the reconciliation. Remember, we talked about policies and procedures and a lot of other things. And we said that in fiscal year 2010, throughout the year, and even into fiscal year 2011, that cash to ledger to treasurer reconciliation was not done. So we had nothing to audit from a system standpoint. It had to be at a point in time. So this will cost, this has already cost from extenders. I mean, this next section will probably cost, my guess is about $30,000.
That's not bad.
Okay? And you've already spent a lot extra on that earlier than that to do the departmental reconciliations, etc. So it's not, doesn't come cheap, but we're looking at individual warrants and transactions, etc., which normally would not come under the purview of a normal audit, and so
Okay, thank you.
that wasn't uncomfortable.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that it was, so there was no speculation.
Okay, if it comes out and it requires more than that, I will inform Mark of that, saying, we're $20,000 into it and we're not close, but I can't tell you that until I really get into the ledgers.
No, I understand that.
I hope it costs $10,000. Okay, and we're done
Yeah,
quickly. But,
yeah. But
that's the
I'm
honest
just
estimation based on past experience with these type of issues.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Oh, Mrs. Ekstrom, did
Well,
you have a
if
question?
I could ask a question, I think the entire community has been beaten up about the $919,000 that, as if, I have it in the back seat of my car or something. And I think that it's been explained that, it's journal entries and the reconciliation so that it's not like we're looking for a box of money.
Right.
Correct. However, in the report, when I was going through it in the management letter, there was one area where it looked like that we actually do have a box of money. And I wanted to address that with you, which was the $528,000 of Chapter 90 funds, which for everyone that, knows, Chapter 90 is the state's reimbursement for our roadways.
Right.
And we haven't been applying for that. Is that what that is,
No.
or is it?
No, that's and actually that's one of the issues that we had talked about this morning. When I ended up, Mark and Derek asked me to join the management meeting. That point is just about cleared up.
Okay.
Okay. What happens is that Chapter 90, you're allocated a certain level of money based on different formula grants the state comes up with and says, all right, Wareham, based on your size, demographics, et cetera, will be allocated, you know, $700,000 for fiscal year 2010. So you can spend that money. But it's a reimbursement type grant. You need to spend the money.
And then send the
So
paperwork.
they don't advance it because it's bond funds usually the state takes out for that. So they want to hold the money, earn the investment income on it, although you can't earn that much right now anyways. But they want to hold the money so you have the expenditures.
Right.
You then send in a reimbursement request to the state, and you get the money back. So it's just a timing issue. But what happens is that if you don't apply for that money, and it's really important around year end, and I went over that with the staff today, if you don't apply for that money on a timely basis, you can still get hit for free cash because you have a temporary deficit in that capital project fund. And so until the cash comes in, so if you wait and don't get the money back in, or you don't apply for the funds on a timely basis, even though you might have got the money in November, the state can still hit you for and reduce your free cash. So that's more of a warning to say that make sure that as projects occur, you don't need to wait to the end of the project in order to request reimbursement. So if you have a $500,000 project and you're $300,000 into it, and you still have 4 months to finish, you don't have to wait that 4 months. You can send that reimbursement request in for the $300,000, get the wheels turning, so you get that in after you spent it. But you're always going to carry a deficit, so that's not found money.
So, well, that's what I want to know, because it said that in the FY10 that there was $528,000. So is that just that it hasn't been requested from the state, or was it requested and it?
It was a request. It was requested after year end. The balance of $528,000 we thought was higher than it should have been.
Oh, yeah.
But that was because of the process and the procedure. And to tell you the truth, just one of the things sometimes you need to do is educate departments about what they do and how they operate, and how that may affect something else. And, you know, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Well, they weren't really aware that by doing that at the end and having a deficit at June 30th has a possibility of affecting your free cash. Even though the money's good, even though you will get that money in, there is a possibility
So this was just a delayed, okay.
Right, and so if you got your free cash reduced and you had it available to you, and just because of timing of paperwork didn't allow you to have the opportunity to use that for, say, fiscal year 2012 in the fall town meeting or something like that, you'd be kicking yourself. And so what our job was to inform you that these things, and just a process. I expect it to be no problem. We talked about exactly how it has to occur, what needs to be done at year end, so I don't envision this as being problematic on a go-forward basis.
So going forward, Mr. Andrews, in your procedures,
Yes.
it's going to be something that on a quarterly basis or a project basis or something? Is that how they're going to address it in the future? Because that is, I mean, because when I first saw it, I was like, wait a minute,
The fall
did we not do this? Do we have
Well,
$500,000 that we're
The
waiting
fall
for them
projects
to
aren't
give
as
us?
problematic because they're not crossing fiscal year end. So you stop your paving, you're not paving during the winter, and so you get several months for the state to approve those particular expenditures and get your
Okay.
money back.
Madam
Where it
Chair,
becomes problematic is when you cross fiscal years.
but Member Extrem is right on target. The accounts clerk in the municipal maintenance area needs to be steadfast, even if it's partial, for requests for payments for April, May, and June, so you can get as much as you can, because we have a very aggressive transportation improvement program, and we're going to stick to that. And I think Jim hit it on the head. You just have to make sure that that part of the fiscal year works very clearly, you know, and very precisely. And then what happens in the fall is another piece, because the fiscal year has just opened up.
Yeah.
And
just to add to that, that extends any deficit that you have in a special revenue fund or a capital project fund that even may be temporary or something that's permanent. The DOR, rightly so, will sit back and say, well, since you haven't been funded for that, and we're not sure whether or not you're going to get reimbursed, you may have a permanent deficit. If you have a permanent deficit in a special revenue fund, you're not going to get a grant to do that. Basically, the general fund will have to eventually pony up and send that money over. So what they do is say, we need to encumber and reserve the cash that you have, part of your fund balance, and knock that down, because there's a possibility that you may have to use that. So this, we talked about with everybody today, that's not just the Chapter 90 funds, that just happened to be a larger balance
Right.
at June 30th. But it applies to all of your grants, all of your special revenue funds, and you need to be aware of that. Same thing with, we had a point on police details. That reconciliation has to be there. The deficit that you have at year end, and we've got a process that we went over today that in May we should be able to opine on that. It's not a huge, potential huge deficit, but what needs to occur, and if there's a deficit there, how is it funded? And is it a permanent deficit or a temporary deficit just because the receivable in the contractor hasn't paid yet?
So it's really essentially like this is like just a snapshot in time, and so tomorrow it could be totally different because you get the reimbursement.
You could have got the $500,000 in tomorrow.
Okay.
And so today's
feel better then.
$528,000 will not go to positive, but it can go to zero. That's how that fund works and it's designed.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I just ask a quick, I'll just make this very quick. Could that, I was looking for, there was a list of numbers somewhere out there that almost added up to the 919, and that's not really important, but could this 548 be a piece of that?
No, not even close.
No.
Okay.
That has nothing to do with the 919. Not to be.
No, that's,
between-
I,
no,
that's,
just,
I
wanna
wish
be
I could,
definitive
I wish
on
I could
that.
find the list, but I can't, so it was more specific, but that 548 was part of it, so that answers my question, thanks.
528.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. We appreciate
Thank
your
you
time.
very much.
Right, thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you very much.
We have one more piece of business this evening. We have the Bourne fourth quarter billing. May I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion for the town of Wareham, for the town to have the, where is it here, I'm sorry, the the committed sewer usage fee to be collected from Bourne from April 1st, 2011, June 30th, 2011, in the amount of $61,006.62, and to have Mr. Foster forward this over there.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? It's unanimous. I know that it's getting late, and I know that we were hoping to be out of here by now. Mr. Andrews, is there anything
Pressing.
that can't wait until the next leadership team?
Madam Chair, I can put this off until next week.
Is there any other business to come before the board?
Madam Chair, could I
Oh, I'm sorry.
just,
Did I skip something? I apologize.
oh, you can't skip Mrs. Sullivan if she's here for a reason. Madam Chair, if I could, just as the...
Sorry, you're not noted that way on my agenda. I apologize.
No, it's entirely my fault. I did not look closely at the agenda to see when citizen participation was, so I apologize.
Oh, so you're a leftover citizens participation? Okay.
A leftover citizen.
I can make an
Great.
exception. Citizens participation. Please come up. Last but not least, let's put it that way. It sounds better.
So you're saying I lost the floor? Is
You've
that what
lost
you're
the
saying?
floor, Mr. Holmes.
To Mrs. Sullivan, anytime.
Thank you. Well, I want to thank the board for always being so supportive of the Boys and Girls Club. I'm here tonight because we didn't participate in the Increase the Peace rally because I mentioned that we had something else that we wanted to do. And I have I've talked to Mr. Andrews in the last week about some issues regarding youth and the lack of summer jobs that are coming to Wareham. There will be none unless by some miracle we do get some, but it appears there's no money. But Mr. Andrews is on that. We've talked about some options that can be pursued to just get more attention from New Bedford. But I have been in touch with the Y, Laura Prisco, and we are working on something we're calling a job preparedness workshop for young people. It'll be at the Y on Saturday, April 23rd. And the purpose of this is to, young people have to go out and look for their own jobs. So we want to give them the best preparation that we can. So we're going to have them fill out applications because many do not know how important the detail of an application is. We're planning on, talking about employer expectations, work ethic, what does it mean to have a job, and, you know, what does that employer expect and so on. And then the other, dressing appropriately for an interview, and just the basics of things that we as adults know, and we expect young people to do these things, but they're not going to do them unless we teach them. So that is the plan. We do need town-wide support because at the Economic Summit, the adults had bags, and we don't have anything for the young people. I have been in touch with New Directions, who are using their PowerPoint, and we're embellishing that with some other things that we have need of. So we need, neither the Y nor the Boys and Girls Club has the financial resources to pull this off, so that we will need support. If anyone, anyone knows, can give us some direction. I have a couple of things in mind that we will pursue. I've talked to the Shirt Shack about the backpacks, because if we give the young people materials, they'll just be left everywhere, and we don't want that. We want them to have something. We're calling this program, and it's interesting because when I picked up today's paper, another program in New Bedford has the same name. We're calling it YO. You know, the kids will say YO. Well, this is YO for Youth on Board for Success in the U on board is what we're looking for. You have to see it. I didn't bring flyers because we're still working on it, haven't finalized it, but the press release did go out today. So anyone that has any ideas, we are looking for, and I already have some people that have committed to doing mock interviews. So, pardon me, and we will have, and I've tried to reach Wendy Montero. I'm hopeful that she'll come and do a little spiel, because at the rally we did not have a lot of young people, had very few, so this will be an opportunity for her to maybe do a little, because that's all part of young people being aware of their actions and how it affects them not only tomorrow but years from now. So, so we're working on that. So I wanted to bring that to the board's attention, and I'll be talking with Mr. Andrews again, because and Mr. Holmes also, for some additional support. I don't know if you have any questions.
Madam Chair, briefly, if I could.
You.
Please.
I do have, and I share the passion that Barbara has for youth, and I do know that in some cases, working on workforce investment boards, that a lot of the money gets kind of bollocksed up in the city, on the city side. I have a letter going to Mayor Lang expressing my deep concern about that Wareham deserves its fair share, and I intend to keep fighting for that with you, Barbara, and we'll do all we can, job by job. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you for all you do for our
Barbara.
youth, Barbara. Mr. Holmes, the floor is yours.
Oh, I got it back. Oh, I just wanted to, before Mr. Andrews, I mean, he had a lot of stuff in here, but one of the questions I had wasn't for Mr. Powers. When do we expect to see the original or the initial response to the management letter?
Through you, Madam Chair, that usually takes a couple of weeks, and we're well ahead of the game by having 2 departmental leadership team meetings from last Thursday through this morning. So I intend to have a draft ready to go back within the next couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews.
It's a good question, Steve.
Yeah, I just because I've said it several times that there are 2 sides to every story, and we only have one side. And I'm still kind of waiting to hear what your response is to that original management letter.
Yes, you are correct.
Is there any other business to come before the board this evening?
Yes, Madam Chair. I don't know if the whole board received it, but just for anyone's information, Chairman Donahue and I were gifted as one of our final gifts from a concerned citizen with an accusation of a violation of the open meeting law. Apparently that when I brought up the motion of the policy regarding the school and the space in their building, that someone took exception that I had already typed the policy and that I referred to it while I was talking. And so, of course, this person has a letter from the superintendent that's dated November 3rd. So therefore, the assumption, I guess the logical conclusion is that Mrs. Donahue and I somehow or other knew about it in November and waited to pounce this on us. So because I won't be here and Mrs. Donahue will not be here, I have a letter that I would like to read into the record. And hey, you know what? It's my last night. Because I'm not done yet. Okay.
Go for it.
April 1st, 2011. To whom it may concern. This letter is in response to Mrs. McDonald's complaint of April 1st, 2011 regarding an alleged open meeting law violation. I have no idea how or why Mrs. McDonald jumps to the conclusion that Chairwoman Donahue had any idea about what I brought up at a Selectmen's meeting on March 22nd, 2011. Chairwoman Donahue did not and still does not have a copy of the policy which I proposed. The only other selectman who had a copy prior to the meeting was Mrs. McDonald's husband's best friend, Steve Holmes, who I gave to just moments before the meeting began. I typed the policy myself without any help or assistance from anyone. I do have the mental and physical capability to create and execute the typing of a policy. Mrs. McDonald states that she is in possession of a letter from the superintendent dated November 3rd, 2010. What she does not state is the letter was addressed to the town clerk and CC'd to the chairman of the school committee and the town administrator. It was not copied to nor received by the selectmen until after I proposed the policy. For Mrs. McDonald to assume that a letter that she is in possession of sparked my actions is ridiculous and purely speculative. I never saw the letter until the superintendent forwarded it to the Board of Selectmen on March 23rd or March 24th. I created the policy on Tuesday, March 22nd, 2011. I thought of it because I was speaking to someone regarding the upcoming election. The person stated that the town clerk was looking at holding next year's election at this person's church due to the superintendent throwing the polls out of the schools. I spoke with the clerk and she confirmed that the superintendent did inform her that she was to find another location for precincts 4 and 5 and that a previous removal of the polls from a school, precinct 2, was made 3 years ago, was at the insistence of the superintendent. Precinct 3 was also moved at that time from another school to the private building. The clerk informed me that the cost for the private building used for precincts 2 and 3 was going up after this election from $800 to $1,000, and she anticipated that if she could get the church hall, it would be about the same amount. I was disturbed by this because of the superintendent's decision. The town will have to pay an additional $2,000 per election. In 2011, this will only be $2,000. But in 2012, this will jump to $8,000. Approximately 70% of our households do not have children in schools, but they all pay for the schools. I don't think it's asking too much for the school department to allow registered voters to use the buildings they pay for to exercise their right to vote. Mrs. McDonald is only adding the chairwoman in the complaint because that is the only way that she can assert the open meeting law has been violated. Quote, and a list of topics that, at the time of the notice is given, the chair reasonably anticipates will be discussed at the meeting, end quote. Mrs. McDonald cannot support her violation against me unless she accuses Chairman Donahue of knowing what I was going to bring up. I believe that Mrs. McDonald is only making this allegation because neither Mrs. Donahue nor I are seeking re-election, and our term is over April 5th. Chairman Donahue publicly stated at several meetings that she has been very mindful of the open meeting law requirements, canceling meetings if proper notice was questioned. This was because a previous board was cited by the DA for 14 violations during a preliminary screening process for new hire because the then chairman did not announce the board would be acting as a preliminary screening committee. I contend that Mrs. McDonald filed the complaint for political reasons, as she has no basis for such an allegation. Last year, days before the local election, a friend of Mrs. McDonald's filed a defamation lawsuit against me and a previous selectman who lost his bid for re-election. Mrs. McDonald has a history of using the public records law as a tactic to tie up employees and attack public officials. She has apparently adjusted her final attack at me and the chair by using the open meeting law. Mrs. Donahue has done an admirable job as the chairman. Mrs. McDonald is simply trying to undermine us as we leave office. There will be no apologies, for none are owed. We did nothing wrong. This is the garbage that we've had to put up with, people. And I have at the end that I have a place, I will be signing this, and I will have a place for Mrs. Donahue to sign if she chooses, because this will be our last meeting, and we're not leaving it to another board to answer for us. That being said, I got one more thing. Like it or not, we're a board. And Mrs. Winslow, I was appalled at the letter to the editor. You absolutely have a right to do that and undermine this board. But Wednesday night, when that was presented, that audit, the review and the management letter was presented, there were 9 members of the Finance Committee here. There was a Board of Selectmen here. You were the one that said, I strongly suggest we all take this home. We read it at our you said we all take this home and review it. I will take it home. I will read it at my leisure. I will take notes on it, and then we should all get back together and discuss it. If, when you read that, now mind you, everyone agreed. 9 people on the Finance Committee and this entire board agreed to it. After we left this meeting, the Finance Committee went downstairs and had their meeting. They were here until about 10:30 at night. About 70% of them had to go to work the next day. They didn't have the opportunity to sit at home and read it. So the earliest any one of them could have read it would have been Thursday night. Without so much a discussion, I can understand, we were all very concerned about it. And I could certainly understand if as soon as you read it Wednesday night when you went home, or Thursday, if you had called the chairman and said, Madam Chair, we need a meeting right away to discuss this. Whether it's we want to discuss it because of personnel, one of the executive session reasons if you could come up with, have an open meeting, get the Finance Committee in here. But I'm not going to be here, but you have one hell of a nerve to undermine your board like that. And you know what? And no,
Madam Chair.
No,
Madam Chair.
I have the floor. Now, I don't care. You will sit there and say, I have every right, blah, blah. I don't care. What I'm saying, it was at your recommendation that we all sit, we all review it. And yet, you were the first one to
Madam
jump
Chair,
out.
There's a so-called news reporter that's taking pictures inappropriately. I'd ask the gentleman to step back and not take any. Excuse me, sir. I think the chairwoman expressed herself earlier.
And excuse me.
Excuse me. Please, this is my last meeting. I'd like to go out quietly. And I think that we should go out quietly at this point in time. I do understand, Mrs. Ekstrom.
Well, there will be 2 new people on this board. And if this board doesn't start, and I'm talking not just specifically you, but you know what? When something is brought to Mr. Andrews, you can go and discuss something with him, give him advice, give him an opinion, but if anyone's going to be directing Mr. Andrews to do or not do something, it better be by a vote of the board. Because just for the people's information out there, for the people's information out there, people are wondering why Chief Stanley hasn't signed. Guess what? They have an agreement. I don't know the specifics of it, nor is it my business. But I will tell you right now that the reason why it hasn't come forward is because this board, there is not a vote of this board. They cannot say that the majority of this board will vote for him. So let me tell it to the people out there, anyone who's out there that wants Chief Stanley, you better let the 3 remaining members of this board know, and you better let the 2 newcomers, whoever they are, know, because if not, there won't be an agreement. But it's done. So this whole thing about, whether or not he'll take it, is it too much money, is it not enough money, that's all worked out. And yet, we're going to be holding what is going to be done by whether these people will support it. And I think they have to just decide up or down. So that's all.
Thank you. I'm glad that's
Madam
all.
Chair,
Thank
has
you.
Mr. Andrews, I haven't heard that. Have you got an agreement with Chief Stanley?
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Let's have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All in-